The most expensive part of doing business is indecision. It's better to make bad decisions faster than right decisions slowly.
These days with AI, sometimes one or two people can build what used to take like a whole team.
So you need still a core group of people, but in multiple areas where you needed a lot of money to hire a lot of people, that has changed. The answer is not AI versus people, it's AI with people.
Welcome to InnovaLeader with your host, Anshin Chang. This is your go-to destination for insightful discussions on leadership and innovation. Welcome to InnovaLeader. Today, we're sitting down with Sugata. Sugata, thank you for joining us. Sugata is the CEO of ZINFI. He built a company around helping businesses scale through partner ecosystems. But today, we're going deeper than software. We're talking about the real grind of leadership, the mistakes, the pressure, the innovation, and what it actually takes to build something that lasts. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Thanks for having me, Anshin. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Sugata Sanyal. I'm a founder and CEO of a company called ZINFI. As Anshin said, we help brands to scale their revenue and go to market through partner ecosystem management.
What was the moment that inspired you to build ZINFI?
So we started ZINFI as an agency. I always worked for large companies. I worked at Philips, Honeywell, Dell. It was a company called Sonyal, then later on Dell acquired. And through those organizations, I saw an opportunity to build a go-to-market motion. So we started as an agency helping those brands to market their product. And then over a period of a decade, we learned that what they really needed is infrastructure as a software so that they can go, reach their partners better, manage their partners better, help their partners, people who resell their products and services better. So we decided to, about 6 years ago, to launch the software company, and we gradually wrapped up our services business. So we're fully focused as a software company. That's how it started.
Oh, that's a really powerful insight. All right, next question. Before becoming a CEO, what did corporate life teach you about power, leadership, and execution?
I think the most important thing in leadership is trust. People, whether they're working with you, whether they're working for you, or you're even working for somebody else, at the end of the day, the biggest and most important attribute everybody migrates to is if I, ask someone to do something, if I depend on somebody to do something, whether it's help them with their careers, whether they help them with whatever, helping them to market or sell their product better, that it will come through. So you learn very quickly is that commitment is very, very important. And as you deliver on your commitment, by working with other people, then you build trust. And when you have trust, people allow you to make mistakes because they know in the end, you will figure things out, you will fix things, and you will get it right. So I would say trust is the most important thing.
Oh, I do agree that trust and commitment are very important things. So a lot of people, they talk about innovation. What are some of the top 3 innovation mistakes that companies keep making?
So innovation is a big word, but it's basically equivalent of change, right? Things are changing rapidly. Like when I was growing up like you, we didn't have any of these things that we take for granted. We didn't have internet, we didn't have mobile, computing devices. Of course, we did not have AI. So in every age, there are drivers for change that sort of come together, and then technology, appears to solve those challenges, right? Because 100 years ago, people didn't need, you could argue they could need AI, but the problems that we have today, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of insights, but we really cannot, translate them into real business impact action item without a platform like AI. So people have been sort of going towards that and solving that. So innovation to me is it's driven by a deep set of pain points that a market segment has or a customers have, and you figure out a way to solve those. And there are two kinds of innovation, right? Innovations that are just ideas, and a lot of them, they never come to market. And then there is commercialization of those ideas. So in our company, we call it CLIck, Customer Linked Innovation and Commercialization. It's great to have ideas, but at the end of the day, you want them to go solve somebody's problems. So to me, that's the foundation. So you had two parts question. One is, what is innovation? And second was, what kind of mistakes people make? The second part is, when you are trying to, great companies have great research labs, right? When you look at Fortune 100 companies, they have amazing research labs. Not all of them, and in fact, many of them don't come to market. And you see then startups like what's happening today, we see Anthropic or OpenAI, they bring ideas to market. And main thing, what happens, I think, in larger companies are built to operate and deliver predictable performance, right? Because it's based on trust, as I just said. Their leaders are all about, delivering on things that they committed. And innovation is a risky business. 9 out of 10 things that you try, they don't work. That's why you see startups, taking chances with whether their own money, whether their investors' money, or certain customers starting them and helping them to take chances. That is the biggest thing, that large companies, they can only take risks so much and they can only spend so much. Now, of course, we're seeing a big difference now when you look at Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they're taking huge risks now. So I would say those would be the two things. One is about change, but other side of that is taking risks. And companies that are able to take risks, at times they succeed. But a lot of the time they're not able to take risks that are necessary to make these innovation, commercial.
Those are great lessons for people who are trying to build something meaningful. All right, next question is, you built ZINFI around partner ecosystems. Why should CEOs care about partnerships if they want to scale?
That's a great question. That is really, I love that question. So if you look at today, maybe, even 50 years ago or 100 years ago, or maybe if you go back in 500 years ago, when you built a product, if you wanted to get it away from where you're actually making it, then you needed either to hire your own salespeople, go travel and sell that product, or you could find somebody that would take your product and sell it in those local market, right? So if you look at sort of the history of humanity, people always travel. They would buy things from Europe and sell it to Asia, or they will buy it from Asia, sell it to Africa, or they will buy from one part of the world and go to another part of the world, right? So over a period of last several thousands of years, people traveled. They would make and manufacture goods on one part and then sell it to the other part. And that is an ecosystem, right? And what has happened over a period of years, things that we buy today. So when you go buy, for example, here in Silicon Valley, you walk into a car dealer and you buy a car. That car is made with thousands of parts. And those parts come from all over the world, right? And it is not possible for a car manufacturer. They do not have all the skills and competencies to make 100% of the parts in-house. So they rely on partners. So the moment you have partners who help you to make parts, you're relying on an ecosystem. So ecosystem has two sides. Ecosystem has a supply side, like when you're buying parts from somebody, and then ecosystem has a go-to-market side, right? Where you're selling through somebody. So the companies that are making parts, at times they don't sell directly to those car manufacturers. They sell to other companies. So they are their partners. And many times car companies don't sell their cars directly to the consumers or businesses, right? They sell to other companies that are called dealers or other sort of, providers. So you need always partners. So for you to build something, you need a supply-based ecosystem. And for you to sell something, you need a go-to-market ecosystem. So without ecosystem, you can't survive. Everybody is part of an ecosystem today.
I think that's some really helpful information. But also, based off of this question, I want to ask you, why do some partnerships fail even when like the opportunity looks strong?
So it's a very complicated question, but I'm going to try to answer into sort of maybe three parts. First is what is called, you really need to find an ideal partner that has the competency, because you're trying to bridge a skill gap that your organization doesn't have in sufficient quantity with an other company, right? Whether they're making a part for you or they're selling a part for you. So the skill alignment is very, very essential. Second, you have to be able to make money for them, right? Because at the end, it's a business partnership. So if your product and services don't have enough capabilities so that they can, take it and make money, then even though they have skills, even though in the beginning there's a lot of excitement, in the end, sort of the business doesn't work, right? And the third part is, at the end of the day, it's about the customer. It's taking care of a customer at the end of that relationship. That's where working together as a company, making that successful. Because if you're doing something today, chances are it's complex, right? So you have to maintain a certain level of quality to the customer. You have to maintain a certain level of pricing. You have to maintain the big word that you asked, innovation. You have to continue to innovate, right? If you don't do that, then the business relationship may be great in the beginning, but then they falters and then they fail eventually. So first is alignment of what you are trying to build and go to market, skill alignment. Second is business, sort of financial alignment, make sure financially both sides can make money. Third is more like a innovational alignment that you can keep on co-innovating, co-building, and going to market together. Once those three things work, partnership becomes hugely successful. But if any one of those things don't work, then partnerships fail.
I see. That answer gives like a lot of clarity to people who want to have good partnerships. Right. So next question I wanted to ask was, what is the biggest leadership lesson that you had to learn the hard way?
I think the biggest leadership lesson is, at the end of the day, it's about the people you work for. You work for, when a lot of people think about companies, about this physical thing, but a company is more of a concept, right? It's on a legal piece of paper that says this entity is allowed to do business. But when you look at that, on both sides of the spectrum, you have customers who are people, and then you have suppliers who are people, and then you have a group of team that show up every day, that are willing to solve a very complex problem, right, on a day-by-day basis that others haven't been able to solve. Because if you're just solving someone else, something has solved, then you have a very limited scope. So at the end of the day, leadership is about figuring out, who you want to serve, finding the people that want to be on your team to serve those group of customers, and then also finding the people that can go find partners for you that can help you to complete the solution, right? Unless you are able to figure those three things out, then the functional part of leadership doesn't work. Second part of it is what I just said. Because you're trying to make a functional alignment across customers, your team members, and suppliers and partners, there's also a human side of things. People are not robots, right? You may show up on a Monday and you're having a tough day because you had a, rough weekend because of whatever reason. I think it's important for leaders to figure out that human side of things, not just sort of the functional side of things, and to make sure they understand and build an environment that can, take care of people in need on, from multiple dimensions.
That leads me to a next question, which is, was there like a specific mistake that changed how you led?
I think there's a lot of mistakes that it happens on a continuous basis. The biggest thing to me, I think leadership is about humility. You have to show up to work knowing very well, especially when you're building a company, most of the things that you do, they really don't work. So going back to that notion of trust, it's very, very important to be transparent. So when you're building a product, you think you understand what the customers need, you try your best to deliver it, but a lot of the time when you're building something, you'll go deliver something and customer will tell you, that it's not meeting their quality requirement, it is not meeting their speed requirement, it is not, there's a lot of things. And so you're pretty much, the biggest thing in that journey is that you're failing most of the time. So it's important, while you want to maintain a very high standard internally and externally and for yourself, but you also celebrate very, very openly for those moments when you actually do win, right? Otherwise, it's always doom and gloom, things are not working. So I think it's important to have, as you grow, to learn from it, is to celebrate your success, be humble, but also take those setbacks as more of a stepping stone to the next phase than just worry about, them being a failure. That's something you didn't learn from.
That's a really honest answer, and I think that answer is really valuable to our audience. Okay, I have a next question, which is, when you're building a company, how do you handle that pressure when people are depending on you?
So first of all, you depend on people. That's where you start, right? So it's very, very important to hire good people. And I know a lot of people say that it's possibly the most difficult part of your job to really figure out who can come and help you to build what you think you need to build based on what the customers are asking you. So that is the most important decision I think every leader makes. And a lot of the time in making that decision, you also make mistakes. Going back to your question about mistakes. So it's a continuous learning, because markets change. Let's say 10 years ago, somebody may be able to could have been able to help you to do certain things, but they don't have skills anymore, and you need somebody else, right? So your organization is a living and breathing entity. So first you have to help those people to see if they can upgrade their skills. But in many times you have to make those tough decisions to say, I need to change my team. I need to get other members. So that is sort of a continuous journey that you need to go through to really, stay focused on what you have to deliver.
So when you're building a company, how do you handle uncertainty, or when there's no right or wrong answer?
So the most expensive part of doing business is indecision. It's better to make bad decisions faster than right decisions slowly. So even though in certain cases, when you're hiring people, I think you have to have a system that you don't go hire people too randomly, too quickly, because that's the most important factor, as I said, in a business. So I think when it comes to hiring, you have to be very, very, I wouldn't say cautious, but methodical in making sure you understand who you're trying to hire for what position, and focus on that as a primary area. But in other areas, even if you may not have enough data, you may have to make decisions. So you have to make a judgment on risk of not having all the information, because perfect information has perfect cost. So if you're trying to get all the information together, the opportunity may not last. And you build essentially a data-driven decision process that you said, okay, I have enough data to tell me what risk I have if I go with option A versus option B and option C. So if you have good people, and if you have good data-driven management processes, then, because you very rarely you make a decision on your own in a company, you're always making a decision with your team, right? And so you have to build an infrastructure that allows people to come to a certain level of conclusions, and therefore you can decide as a team, not just on your own. In certain cases, you have to make decisions on your own in certain areas, but those are more exceptions than the rule.
I think that is a very critical lesson that many founders should learn. So these days, with AI, sometimes one or two people can build what used to take a whole team. So if you were starting a new company today, would you build it with people or keep it to one or two people and AI?
I think you still need a core group of people, because you need expertise on, how to go to market, like how to sell, how to build sort of an onboarding process with customers. Then of course you need to know how to build infrastructure for your product and how to build your product, and then support that. So you need still a core group of people, but in multiple areas where you used to take, you needed a lot of money to hire a lot of people. That has changed. Having said that, at the end of the day, like for example, 10 years ago, Series A was anywhere between, I don't know, $7 to $10 million, maybe $15 million. Today, the Series A numbers are much higher. Now, how those teams are spending money is very different because a lot of them are trying to capture a category. So you have to move very, very fast, and you have to go deploy a lot of capital on the go-to-market side. So that question, I think it varies by companies. But previously, let's say if you're starting a services company, if you need 5 or 6 people to start a services business, you possibly need half of that because you can do a lot of those using AI. If you're building a product company, you may need 5 or 6 engineers to get the core product concept to a certain level. You may need half of that. So, but you still need people, and you still need good people, and we'll continue to have that. So,
that's a really practical takeaway. So the next question is also about AI. So AI and automation are changing businesses like really fast. So what should leaders be paying attention to right now to keep up in the AI race?
First, I think you need to prioritize based on customers. At the end of the day, we exist to take care of customers. So the way we are looking at things to really figure out, the customers that we have today, before we get a new one, how can we take care of our current customers better, right? So understand their issues, understand their challenges, understand what we need to improve from our process side, on the product side, on our people side of skills. So that, I think, is a very, very important thing. So companies who have existing businesses like us, I would say the first area to focus on, how can we improve what we do significantly better with the people we have, right? That's number one. Number two is skill augmentation of your people. Like previously, very few members of your team would have full context. But today, because AI can aggregate volumes of data, you can put together knowledge bases that marketing can access and understand what's going on in products. Product can access, understand what's going on in sales or customer success. Engineering can access across all of those functions, right? So the knowledge part and access part has become a lot easier. So I would say companies, once they figure out what they need to do for their customers, second thing, I think they need to figure out how to democratize access to knowledge across all functions so they can do their job better, right? And third is, because you have a lot more information, you have to build a different information management system. The system that we had before was fine for patchy, uneven flow of data. Systems that we need today, they need much more comprehensive 360-degree views of what's happening around the customer, what's happening around your people, what's happening around your finances. And so that, I think, well, in the old days, it used to be called a dashboard. Today, it's more of an intelligence management system that you need to build. So that's how you prioritize. You prioritize focusing on the customer. You prioritize focusing on making your team members have access to as much knowledge as possible so they can make the right decision, upgrade their skills, and do the right things. And third, you as a leader, both from a functional perspective, but also from a business perspective, really need to have 360-degree view of the business that you could not have before, but now you can have.
That leads me to the next question, which is, how do leaders adopt new technology without losing the human side of business?
So as I kind of went through, I think you need to stay focused on, who you are and who do you need to be based on the markets and customers you serve. So unless you're in the French fries business and you said, I am tired of selling French fries, I want to go sell shoes, then that's different. But if you're in the food business and you're trying to figure out, okay, I serve breakfast, how do I also sell lunch? And how do I also sell dinner to the same customer? Then you have to kind of really understand the customer, right? How do they use your product? What do they do? How can we make their life easier? Because companies are tired of buying random, applications and random tools and random devices. So there is a great pressure towards, a need towards simplifying, unifying, what they do, so their life is less complex and they can do a lot more with less, right? So companies, I think, at the end of the day, really need to figure that out. And that is a function of both technology and people and process. So the answer is not AI versus people, it's AI with people. As new things AI can do that we could not do before, I think companies can figure out new ways of solving the old problem better, or solve new problems because they just couldn't reach those better. So I think that's how companies need to focus and prioritize. At least that's what we're doing.
Oh, I think that's a really great insight about how AI can actually collaborate with humans.
Yeah.
So now what are the top 3 pieces of advice you would give to startup founders who want to scale a company successfully?
So that's again a hard one. It's depending on the segments you're on. But what I've seen from my friends and other companies that have been successful, and I watch this space like a hawk, and as you know, we've started this group called East Bay Founders, trying to build companies. First is deeply understanding the customer problems. Like, why would a customer hire you versus somebody else, and what choices they have, and more complex the problem, better the price is. So if you're solving a simple problem, then it's great. You may have a business because you're doing something locally and do incrementally better. And, but that business may not be scalable, right? So if you're trying to build a highly scalable and a profitable business, in today's world, chances are you have to go after a very complex problem. Second part is, if you're going after a complex problem, it has many pieces. You cannot solve all of those pieces at once. So while the architecture that you build, whether it's a hardware device or a software device or even a services architecture, you need to understand the entire pieces of the puzzle that you have to solve, but you must start somewhere. And that starting point is very, very important to understand that would people pay you money to start with something? And then as you keep on solving more and more pieces, right, can you keep them happy because what you did for them for the first time was something that they liked? And that is very difficult, right? Because when you're starting up, understanding that entire surface and taking out pieces from those surface and say, okay, I'm going to solve this entire area, but I'll start with these 3 things or 4 things. And the last part, as I said, most important thing is, who is around you, and who is with you. So you have to find a great co-founder. You have to find a great founding team. You have to find board advisors. You have to find, if you're raising money, the right kind of investors. There's a lot of money out there, and people make mistakes in rushing to raise money, and they find out they're not the right investors. So I would say, deeply understanding the customer, deeply understanding the sequence, how you solve, and then figure out who are with you, who you want to get. And of course, at the end of the day, you have to have great financial ability to look at the problem and look at everything through a financial lens. But that's a given. But I would say those are the 3 main things you have to work at.
I like how you broke that down from both a leadership and business perspective. Yeah. So now for the entrepreneurs watching this, what is the truth about building a company that no one tells them?
Can you ask me a little differently? Like, what do you mean?
So what are some behind the scenes things about building a company that some other people might not know about?
Okay, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is most of the things that you do, and it's very different when you are one person versus 10 people, then 25, then 50, then 100. And from 100 onwards, you start getting complex. So the first phase, when you're trying to get 10 people to 25 people, now 10 people can do a lot. In the old days, like 10 years ago, when you're building a company, you would not worry a lot about infrastructure. Your goal would be to build as fast as you can, go to market as fast as you can, get customers as fast as you can. But today, AI allows you to build infrastructure. So if you're building today, I would say focus on building a scaffold around how you go to market. That has to be an AI infrastructure. How you sell, there has to be an AI infrastructure. How you develop, there has to be an AI infrastructure. How you customer serve, there has to be an AI infrastructure. How you engineer, and product manage. How you do HR and finance. You can build at a fraction of the dollar an infrastructure that allows you to scale from the beginning. That's why you're seeing a lot of companies, smaller companies, are getting very high revenue velocity because they are figuring out what is the unit that they want to replicate and what infrastructure they need to power that replication. And so I would say 10 years ago, people worried less about processes and infrastructure in the beginning. They focused more on product market fit and go to market and the financial aspects of it. Those are given. But today, I think there is a benefit of a founder the founding team build a solid infrastructure to scale an idea much faster versus even an existing company like us. We have an infrastructure that we're trying to upgrade. It's harder for an established company to upgrade their infrastructure and build a new infrastructure versus a new company to build it from bottoms up from day one. So there's a huge advantage of that.
That's a really powerful insight, and I think a lot of founders can learn from that. So thank you so much, Sugata. I really appreciate your time and the insights you shared today. And there were a lot of valuable takeaways, especially around leadership, innovation, AI, and what it really takes to build and scale a company.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Great questions. I loved it. Thank you, Anshin.
Thank you for listening.